on the air, and we are live here at the wharf in rainy Orange Beach. It's rainy today. Man, there was an electrical storm like you would not believe last night. You've joined the Blue Plate Special. I'm Andy Andrews. We got a great show planned. Gene McDonald was the very first in, followed closely by Mark Lowry. Now, you guys are halfway to a world-class quartet right there. So, I don't know who else could join you and how we could put you together. But thank you guys for both being there. Gretchen Hayes, hi from Wichita. I talked to Jason this morning, Jason Crabb, and he has a song called Ellsworth, Kansas that is just unbelievable. It's just an unbelievable song. It's the only song I've ever heard about Alzheimer's. A very sensitive song, just a killer song. And I was talking to him, and I said, Jace, what do you know about Ellsworth, Kansas? Because I didn't really know a whole lot about it, and was doing some research this weekend, and I find something, and I rabbit trail it all down, and I found out that Wyatt Earp was once a deputy marshal at Ellsworth, Kansas. So how about that? Hey guys from Dallas, Chet, how are you? Patricia, hi. I can't believe, Patricia, that you let Gene and Mark get in ahead of you. Usually Patricia Clapp is like the very first one that I see. Hey Yvonne, how are you? Hey, you guys, if you haven't already pressed the notification button and would like to be notified when we do something live or even alive, I would love for you to press that notification button, and they'll wake you up or whatever when we're actually live. So also share if you don't mind. Jimmy Yeary says sharing is caring, and that's true. Hey, PC. Hey, Irene. Kevin Perkins, the old man, a real person. We laughed about that this weekend. Kevin and I talked, and I said, you wouldn't believe how many people asked me, that Kevin Perkins, is that a real person? And I always say, yeah, I don't know. Dave Timmons, how are you? Man, you must be lonely at the airport. Dave Timmons owns the Pensacola Airport. Seems pretty, it's not very lively here at the wharf today, just to let you know, but you could stop in sometime. This is the wharf. We have beautiful statues of the marlin. There's 2 life-size stainless steel marlin. We also have some escalator statues here. There's the unbelievable escalator statues. They look exactly like the real thing, but they, of course, don't go up and down. Dennis, hey, Judson. You guys, today, I'm excited about this. I've been thinking about this all weekend. Judson says, I hope Kevin is real. Yeah, he's your dad. He should be real. And sometimes I've wondered, though. Sometimes I've wondered. Kevin and I have been friends since high school. We've been like best friends since high school. So it's very funny to me to have somebody that I like that knows that much about me, and I know that much about him, and we've remained friends all the time. Let's see, Terry, watching from Tuscaloosa, Mecca. Yeah, I'm glad you're with us. Are we going to play football this year? I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, it's just amazing. The courts may say that we can't play football. I actually have a couple of really good friends that are just getting over COVID. So this is no joke. So they had a rough time. And one of them, the entire family, got very, very sick. So, but the courts may say that we can't play football because the courts, they seem to dictate everything. I saw where the courts say that the president has to show his tax returns. I think that's kind of funny, actually. I don't really care, but I think it's funny because I personally, this is just me, I don't really want to see that. I mean, this is just me, but I don't really want to see the tax returns of a billionaire who became a public servant. What I would like to see, I would like to see the tax returns of all the congressmen and senators who were just normal people who became public servants and then became millionaires. That's the one I'd like to see. How does that happen? How does that happen? We have a governor in Alabama that went to prison, and I mean, out of college, he was like immediately elected to some public service thing, and every year of his life, he was in some kind of public service in an elected position. And when he went to prison, he was worth millions. How does that happen? I don't even get it. I don't even get it. Hey, Chris Comer, this is not, just no political comment. I'm just saying I don't get it. So today we're going to read the second chapter. We've read the prologue and chapter 1 Thursday of the new book, Just Jones. And the prologue, it says, Just Jones, see if I can remember the prologue. Just Jones, sometimes a thing seems impossible until it is actually done. This is the third noticer book. And I honestly, I'm not just saying this. I really think this is the best thing I've done. So, writing-wise, and I think the story, I think you're going to just, freak over what happens with the story. I think I've laughed writing it. I think it's very, very cool. Dave, you're in Phoenix. It's 115 degrees in Phoenix, but it's a dry heat. That always kills me when you say I was in Las Vegas one time. It was 115, 116, and that's what they say. It's a dry heat. Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, so is my oven. 115 degrees, really? But I do get the dry heat thing because here, we have a lot of humidity, and people don't like the humidity in the summertime, but in the wintertime is when the humidity shows itself and nobody really thinks about it, because it can be 50 degrees with the wind blowing and that humidity. And let's just put it this way. It's a wet cold. Okay. It's a wet cold. It may not be cold to you, but it's a wet cold. If it gets down to 40, oh my gosh. People are dressed like, Eskimos. Can you say Eskimos now? Can you say Eskimos? Am I going to get in trouble for saying Eskimos?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know. I wouldn't name a team after them or anything, but Eskimos. So here we go. Are you ready? Gene McDonald, are you ready? Gene, when are you coming down this way? I want you in the studio. I want to do a show with you in the studio. So when you come this way, when you are cleared to leave the state, I know you live in Tennessee, so when you're cleared by the COVID authorities and the courts to leave the state, I would love for you to come this way. Kevin Williams is coming. Kevin Williams is coming it's sometime in August. Okay, he's coming and going to do a Blue Plate special. We're going to do a podcast. I was just thinking, the podcasts are now, we're videoing those too. So we're having audio and video, and doing one today for next week that is going to be awesome. And then the one that comes out tomorrow at 3:15 in the morning on the West Coast, the one that comes out tomorrow is John Murphy. He is this world-class guy who he coaches companies, and I have said for a long time, people say, why do you live in Orange Beach, Alabama? And I said, because I can, what I do for a living doesn't require me to live any particular place, and I like Orange Beach, and so I live here. And John Murphy lives in the south of France. So, that's a little, to me, that's probably not just a little, it's probably a lot classier. The south of France is a lot classier than the south of Alabama. But he told me on the other thing, he said, yeah, we just swimming in the Mediterranean, beautiful clear water. And I was like, yeah, we rode our bikes to a canal the other day. But beautiful. So here we go. I want to do the second chapter of Just Jones. Remember the prologue. Now the prologue has to do with later on in the book. You'll find out where that connects. But I love doing something that has a connection later, that ties in later, something that when I'm reading, I love that when I'm reading it, to read something that was created way earlier, and then I see the results of it, later in time or later in the book. And so that's what's going to happen with this. You're going to see some amazing connections in this book. And then the first chapter, Keely Higgins was in jail, and she was there being talked to by the old man. And so I read just a little bit of chapter 2 on Thursday, and so I'm gonna read that part again. That's just like a few paragraphs, just to kind of get you into it. But this is chapter 2 of Just Jones. And the book comes out September 8th. You can pre-order it now, and I would really appreciate it if you would. Here we go, chapter 2. 0. It was a word that perfectly described the amount of sense this phone call was making to me. It was the middle of the night, and I was not yet fully awake. What? I managed to croak, requesting the information be repeated. I wasn't certain I had heard correctly. Who? Again, I asked the caller to restate the information. Why? This I asked several times. True, I was in a fog, but the news she was attempting to deliver was almost incomprehensible. When? Not that I cared. At this point, I was stalling for time, struggling to think clearly, but it wasn't working. This made no sense, or as I stated earlier, 0 sense. Was this someone's idea of a joke? I turned the clock on the bedside table toward me. It read 3:27, a time that is either late at night or early in the morning, depending upon who you are. For me, it was both. As a writer and speaker, I often rise early to peck away on my computer keyboard in the pre-dawn silence. On the other hand, flight delays or long drives occasionally cause me to crawl into bed about this time, and upon those occasions, I consider it late. Crossing the room, I quickly pulled on the blue jeans I'd left draped across a chair and headed to the closet for a shirt. Are you going to your office? Polly said sleepily. And did the phone ring? No to the first question, I replied in the darkness. Yes to the second. And as an aside, good grief, I wish I could sleep like that. Despite the circumstances, I smiled and shook my head, acknowledging to myself once again how vastly different my wife were in so many ways. This way had practically become a family joke. A hurricane couldn't wake her up. Me, drop a feather on the floor, and I'm out of bed, dressed, and ready to go. If you aren't headed to your office, why are you getting dressed? She shook off the sleep and sat up to turn on the lamp. And who called it? Polly leaned over to look at the clock. 3:29 in the morning? Now fully clothed, I approached her side of the bed and turned off the lamp. Well, I began, it's one of those good news, bad news kind of things. Okay, she said, waiting. I kissed her on the head. The good news is that Jones is back. The bad news, however, I took a deep breath and sighed, is that apparently the old man is in jail. There was a faint orange glow in the eastern sky. I was driving into the sunrise and just past the halfway point between my home in Orange Beach, Alabama, and Clanson, Florida. Unable to quickly find it on a map as I'd hurried from the house 90 minutes before, I was nonetheless unconcerned about finding the small town. Even without help from my trusty map of the southeastern United States, I'd left my driveway with no doubts about the trip. Such are the miracles of GPS. Not only does the global positioning system provide turn-by-turn instructions about all aspects of a drive, the technology apparently bestows confidence upon the driver as well. And for someone like me, one of society's directionally challenged, that's a big deal. As color began to fill the horizon, I glanced at the screen in the dashboard. The straight path route I had chosen, I realized, was taking me north of what some referred to as Cracker Kingdom. The name is spoken with admiration, a nod to the original Florida crackers who first populated the area as pioneer settlers. Searching for a new life, they began to arrive after Spain traded Florida to Great Britain in 1763. Legend has it that the name Cracker was given these people as a reference to the cracking of the long rawhide whips they used to round up wild cattle. The area, though, marked by the occasional small town, is still mostly untamed wilderness. A combination of palmed prairie and hardwood swamp, Cracker Kingdom's desolate roads can make for an unusual adventure. Driving through the area after dark, one is reminded of scary stories from childhood, tales so vivid that decades later, in a place like this, healthy imaginations can run wild. Even today, every now and then, someone will swear to having encountered a hatchet-wielding escapee from the insane asylum from whom they barely got away after they slowed their car to pick up a hitchhiker who turned out to be a ghost girl in a prom dress with a golden arm. In the daylight, however, this unspoiled stretch of Florida has some of the most beautiful scenery in the state. Perhaps, I've often thought, the real reason it remains so unspoiled is because its two-lane roads are rarely used by visitors en route to the Gulf of Mexico. With its moss-draped trees and alligator-infested backwaters, this forgotten treasure seems practically invisible to outsiders. Instead, they seem to prefer the traffic of several unbending four lanes that run north and south, connecting Interstate 10 and whatever beach they've selected for vacation. These highways were clear-cut through the landscape years ago and have since been cemented into place by vast walls of convenience stores and fast food joints. In any case, for whatever reason, most tourists drive the straightest shot they can find. As the top edge of the sun became visible, my musings turned to the reason for this drive. I was unsettled, having no idea why the old man had been jailed and couldn't imagine what he might have done to deserve it, but I would get him out, or be there when he got out, or something. Jones had inserted himself into my life decades ago. To say that I was at loose ends during that time would be understating the situation by a large degree. I had been 19 when my mother, after a long bout with cancer, had finally succumbed. Shortly after, my grief-stricken father, in an otherwise survivable automobile accident, had managed to follow her into the afterlife by not wearing a seatbelt. Suffice it to say, I was no financial genius at the age of 19. It did not take me much more than a year to run through the $2,500 my parents' life insurance policies paid out upon their deaths. My father had been a minister, my mother a homemaker, so there were no houses or cars, no land or jewelry, no stock certificates or baseball card collections or jars of cash buried under cabbages in a garden. No, the life insurance was my entire inheritance. Since I already owned an old car, I bought a trailer with the money. Mobile home is far too fancy a description for the ancient wobbly box of very thin sheet metal with holes in the floor I acquired. Still, however, I couldn't afford it. Inconveniences like electric bills and paying for food began to get in the way. First, I sold the car and got a small used motorcycle. Within a year, I had to sell my trailer, but I wasn't really concerned. Having gotten $1,500 for it, I was practically rich. After all, I still had my motorcycle. Oh, and I bought a tent. My thinking at the time was, hey, I'm single. I have transportation, a roof over my head, and cash in my pocket. What more does a guy in his early 20s really need? What more? Apparently nothing, because several months later, that's exactly what I had. Nothing. So I moved to the beach. To be clear, I did not move to a house on the beach. I moved to the beach. I lived on the beach, in the sand. I knew I was alone, but it didn't take too long for me to become sad and angry as well. Today, as strange as it may seem to the tourists, convention goers, and the vast flocks of Michigan or Wisconsin snowbirds who visit year-round, back then, Orange Beach, Alabama was not a year-round place. It's probably inconceivable to most that during the 70s and early 80s, the tiny resort communities along the panhandle of Florida and the Alabama Gulf Coast became ghost towns in winter. Restaurants closed and shops were boarded up. Almost everyone in Orange Beach and our sister city, Gulf Shores, hunkered down, counted the change left in tip jars, and hoped the money they had made from March to mid-October would carry them through until the following spring. Me? I had no tip money, but I ate a lot of fish. When the old man stepped into my life, a couple more years had passed, and I was sleeping most nights under the Gulf State Park Pier. Today, I still live in the area, Orange Beach, Alabama, and the pier is still here, now the longest anywhere on the Gulf of Mexico. Of course, hurricanes have required it be given an update or two since that time. One of the more interesting facelifts to me is the newfangled strip slat decking, all wood. The idea is that in the event of a hurricane's high winds and water, the slats will blow away, leaving the concrete structure of the massive pier intact. Back when I had quietly requisitioned the pier as my home, the whole thing was a cement company's dream. There was no wood. Even the decking was comprised of enormous slabs of concrete set end to end on colossal pilings. As people walked excitedly out onto this beautiful landmark, an above-water reef that stretched far into the Gulf, they all had their heads up and their eyes glued to those already fishing. For almost 2 years, Jones was the only person who'd figured out that I had a tiny home under that pier. Just beyond the parking lot, below the first concrete slab, right where it began to angle up, I burrowed under a concrete girder. Behind the massive crosspiece was where my hiding place was created. All the work was done with my hands and a small shovel, and in truth, I'd have been easy to find if anyone had known where to look. Through the years, I've been asked many times how I was able to turn my life around. Usually, someone will put it like this: how did you escape from under the pier? It's a funny question to me, as if they assumed I was trapped under there and almost never saw daylight again. On the other hand, I see their point. In a way, I was trapped, because how I lived at that time became who I thought myself to be: scruffy and unkempt, without much hope or direction, and with anger quietly bubbling under the surface of my soul. Then Jones showed up, and I began to see a little daylight in my life. Curiously, Jones never told me what to do. He only asked questions and made observations. Yet it was with these tools, one a chisel, the other a hammer, that the old man dramatically expanded my thought process. Remember, this was the guy who told me you can't believe everything you think. At the time, the concept rattled my brain, but that one statement, as odd as it seemed at the time, pointed my life in a particular direction. It eased me onto a pathway that would have me on a constant search for new answers, better solutions, ones that lay beyond what many experts had already accepted about how it was done or the best way to do it. The truth, I finally understood in the statement, "You can't believe everything you think," eventually led me to a mission of helping other people move into the light, just as Jones had done for me. By the way, I didn't just come up with that "move into the light" phrase. That, too, is a direct quote from Jones. Actually, it was one of the things he said to me the night we first met. Maybe it's because there really were sodium vapor bulbs illuminating the sand just outside my home. But honestly, it was a long time before I connected those words with the darkness that I had been living in and his part in saving me from it. He was a crafty old guy, funny sometimes too, but I can't say he was particularly tactful. Once, I came at him with some statistics in order to argue the point of a story he had told me the day before. When I finished my prepared volley, the old man laughed and told me I had done well for someone who had collected the argument's research in less than 10 minutes. "Numbers alone can tell a story without context," he said. "Decisions made without context rarely reach their potential." Listening closely, I became aware that perhaps my debate victory had not been as decisive as I'd thought. Jones continued, "Reading, listening, being quiet occasionally, quiet enough to deeply consider what you're learning, these are ways one can wring context from what had previously been mere fact. Commit to these activities, and you'll possess an advantage that will make itself known in every area of your life." He paused. When his eyes narrowed a bit, and a mischievous grin crept across his face, I knew what was coming. Everything the old man had said so far could have been listed in column A, Jones with the chisel. Now, I figured I was about to experience Jones with a hammer. Sure enough, he pounded home his point with this gem: "Facts and data are usually the default position for people who are not working on themselves." Wow. Okay, I got it. Here's another example of Jones using his considerable wit to cover a direct message he wished to convey. During the time I was living under the pier, I'd been washing boats with 2 other guys in a marina. We were working on a huge sport fishing yacht when they suddenly offered me the princely sum of $5 whole to jump from the boat's tuna tower, a lookout position 42 feet above the water. To win the prize money, however, my leap would have to be over the dock and into the next boat slip 15 feet away. Without hesitation, I climbed the tower and jumped. As might be expected, I managed the 42 vertical feet quite easily. Once airborne, however, I sensed the 15 horizontal feet might contain a higher level of difficulty. Though I was free-falling at the time, my calculation proved to be correct, and I was reminded once more of the adage, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. I was about an inch shy of clearing the dock completely. Unfortunately, that inch connected with my left forearm. Nothing was broken, but the scrape was impressive. Also impressive was the sensitive concern about my well-being offered immediately by my friends who, before I even made it to the surface, were loudly announcing that they were not going to pay because I had failed the attempt. Nice. That evening, I was walking the beach with Jones and moaning about my bad fortune. Why in the world did I do that? I asked myself aloud. Though I had not meant the question for him, the old man chuckled and answered immediately, saying, I think you let your want to get overwhelmed by your should I. I laughed and shrugged it off. Oh, well, I said, everything happens for a reason, right? With the same chuckle as before, he responded, Oh, sure, but sometimes that reason is because you weren't thinking clearly and did something stupid. My eyebrows went up, and he added, Keep your head fixed on principles that will guide your life. Otherwise, your mind and body will drift, and you won't know it until it's too late. Consider the things you'd like to accomplish in the future and how tragic it would be to end up an inch shy on all of them. Glancing at the GPS in my Ford truck, I saw that I was less than 10 minutes away from my destination, and Jones weighed more heavily on my mind than ever before. By the dozens, it seemed, fleeting thoughts and episodes from the past were flitting through my consciousness, each remembrance separate and contained, every scene individually complete in my mind's eye. In reality, I suppose, it happens in an instant unless we dial into a particular event. I thought again of that much younger version of myself and an admonition I'd received at that time from the old man. Earlier, I mentioned being scruffy and unkempt. Well, I was. As Jones would say, not a judgment, just an observation. It was 11 a.m. on a weekday, and time to clean fish for Nancy, the owner of Sea and Suds. I was about to walk up the beach and had on blue jean cut-off shorts and a T-shirt that was particularly wrinkled. Neither, I'm certain, had been recently washed. Jones was sitting in the shade of a nearby palm when I emerged from underneath the pier. I told him where I was headed. Just a suggestion, he said, but you might want to grab another shirt. That one has seen better days. I stared at him and responded, I'm just cleaning fish. The fish don't care how I dress. The old man laughed and remarked, Well, you got me there. That is entirely true. But the truth of the thing is a different matter." He paused to see if I was listening. I was, and he took the opportunity to give me an incredibly valuable example of proper thinking. "You are surely right," he began. "The fish don't care nothing about the way you dress. Those fish don't care how you act when you're at sea and suds, or what you do when you ain't even close to the place. However, you are working for Nancy, a lady whose livelihood depends upon how the customers of her restaurant perceive her employees, what they do, and how they act. Patrons of a restaurant who see food prepared by someone who's not at least as clean as they'd like their food to be, well, they tend to find another place to eat. When they leave and don't come back, that affects the livelihood of the restaurant's owner. That livelihood, the money your boss makes from that restaurant, is what pays you. Without a successful business owner, you are out of work. As an employee, the fish cleaner, you are one of the first people your boss's customers see. If the fish cleaner is messy and not particular about how he dresses, or even if his clothes are washed, the customers are likely to think, maybe those fish aren't too clean either. Fish that aren't entirely clean can make a person sick. Folks know this, and wisely stay away from any fish they suspect might not be cleaned properly. If your boss's customers decide they'd rather not risk eating fish that might not have been cleaned properly, your boss's livelihood is diminished. And when she doesn't have the money to pay a fish cleaner, she cleans the fish herself. Which means, Jones let that last part hang there until I filled in the rest of the thought. Which means, I said, that I'm out of work. He smiled and winked. I turned and motioned for him to follow me back to the pier, which he did. Looking both ways, we ducked underneath, and soon I was into the plastic storage container I used for clean clothes. While I was changing shirts and combing my hair, he left me with this: "Noting a person's messy appearance at work is just an observation, not a judgment. But observations over time, added together and weighed carefully in context, do lead to judgment. It's usually the quiet and unspoken kind, but it's still judgment. And in today's world, this kind of judgment becomes the difference in yes or no, hired or rejected, laid off or retained, promoted or passed over. And most folks don't have a clue as to what happened one way or another." As I smiled at the memory of how Jones had been so on the mark back then, I thought about how long it had been since I'd seen him. 6 years? 7? I wasn't certain, but knowing it wouldn't be long now, I turned into the parking lot of the Clanson Detention Center. So that's chapter 2. You guys, I hope you're enjoying this. I'm enjoying reading it to you. Coming up, I think, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, right in there, Gabe from HarperCollins. He's the honcho that's in charge of all the books that go to Audible. And he's going to be here. And Matt and I and Gabe will be recording, and we're hoping that outside the studio here, there's a whole area that is going to have some books and one day some T-shirts or something. I'm going to display my collection of stuff from the Andy Griffith Show here. Going to be some historical artifacts here, and so we hope we'll let you know. We hope some of you can come and watch. We've got 3 days of recording. Hey, Bob Woodall, how are you doing, buddy? So we got 3 days of recording there, and we hope that you can come in and watch this. I don't know if you have seen. I mean, there is a booth. It's like a big sound booth that is actually figures into the story toward the end, and so I just cannot wait for you to get a hold of this book. You know, they're available for pre-order now. Some people have asked. They said, "What about the Audible?" You can go on Barnes and Noble and get the audio. You can click on audio, or you can go on Amazon and click on the audio, or however you want to do it. And but if you don't mind, we really need your help to hopefully get this book on a bestseller list. And so they count these books when you order them. Each order counts as one. So if you order 5 books in an order, that counts as one order. That's repeated. That's reported to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. That's reported as one book. And so if you don't mind going to the hassle of ordering a book and then going back and ordering another book, that would be great if you can. And hey, Bob Woodall, did you notice the stuff behind? These are also, I take these shots. And so that's another thing that we're going to have out here in the what we're calling it, the general store. Out here, we're going to have these are signed and numbered editions. A lot of them are I'm doing very, very close up, heavily in focus of different fish. I'm just very interested in that, and I'm very interested in close up stuff and wildlife photography. And so we're having these done and signed and numbered. And this one right there, that is a mahi. In case you're wondering, it's actually, the real name of it is a mahi. The fish so nice, they named it twice. That is a barracuda. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that, Matt? Nope, you can't see it. Well, trust me, there's a barracuda right up there. That is a chipmunk, and that chipmunk is, his home is right under the Mount Rushmore. So Austin and I were there and managed to get that great shot of that chipmunk at Mount Rushmore. What else do I see? There's a hummingbird. This is mullet scales. Just got a lot of different stuff here. So you guys, thank you for being with us on this Blue Plate special. We are hoping to have another one Friday. There is so much going on here that we're hoping to have another Blue Plate special Friday. But be looking for the podcast to come out. It comes out tomorrow and at 3:15 on the West Coast. 3:15. Anything else? I can't think of anything else. We're having chicken and dumplings for dinner tonight at my house, so I'm very excited. So I think that's all. Thank you guys for being with me, and I'll see you very, very soon.